Welcome to this training on how to count pips and points. My name is Zachary, and in this video we're going to be discussing how to count and measure pips in the foreign exchange market, how to count and measure pips in the commodities markets, and how to count and measure the indices movement. The whole intention of what we're going to be looking at in this specific training is to help you get a better idea of how to actually understand the potential profits and losses that would be incurred if the market moves in your direction or against you. And the only way to really do that is by having an understanding of the actual calculations, knowing what it is that you can do to understand the price movement from one point to the next. So we're going to simplify that in today's training. The first thing that I'm going to show you is on TradingView. They have this little ruler tool. It is called the measure tool. And most brokers, if you're using something that connects with MetaTrader 4, for instance, will offer you a similar tool over on their platform, but this can be one way of actually measuring the price movement. So if we were to scroll in on the US dollar to Canadian Forex pair and use the measurement tool, we could go from the low of this blue bullish candle body, measure it to the high. And if we look at the number on the right where it says 66.8, that is the number of pips that the bullish daily candlestick moved. So 67 pips, give or take. The measurement tool, while it is helpful in the very beginning, it's pretty simple and easy to understand how to actually look at the price scale and understand the difference between one price point and the next. For the majority of Forex pairs, it's super simple to understand how the pips are calculated. If we take a look right now on the right-hand side, we're going to use whole numbers just to keep it simple. If we take a look at 1.36, we'll mark that up with a black line. And if we go all the way up to 1.37, from 1.36 to 1.37, that is the equivalent of 100 pips. Now, I'm not going to show you how to actually convert your lot size in this training. It's fairly simple. You know that a micro lot is the equivalent of 10 cents per pip. You know that a mini lot is the equivalent of $1 per pip. Standard lot being $10 per pip. So it's pretty simple to understand the math behind it. But this would be a 100 pip movement. So from 1.36 to 1.36 100, that's 10 pips. To 1.36 200, that's 20 pips, 30 pips, 40 pips, 50 pips. You get it. Super simple. The exact same thing if we were to look at GBP USD. From 125, 1.25, right there, all the way up to 1.26, that's the equivalent of 100 pips. Okay, when we're talking about a single pip, for the majority of Forex pairs, if we take a look at the decimal and go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, that is the pip. Okay, so if we look at the current price, 1.25561, even though it's moving, okay, it's currently the 5 that I have my arrow on right now. It was previously a 6. So in the time that we've been watching this, the market has moved about 1 pip. Super simple. The only currencies that have a exception is the yen pairs. If we take a look at something like USD JPY, we can see it's structured a little bit differently, but it's still super easy to understand. Looking at the current price, if we were to mark up 107.000, 100 pips would be up at 108.00. And we can do our measurement right there to confirm that. There we go, 100 pips. And so if we go down into the micro and we look at some smaller prices from 107 to 107 100, that's 10 pips. So to 107 200 from 107, that's 20 pips, 30 pips, 40 pips, 50 pips, 60 pips. You get it? Super simple. So the pip on the yen pairs is going to be, if we go 1 and then 2 to the right of the decimal, if we look at the current price, it is the 4. That would be the pip. So when it goes from 4 to 5, if it were now to go from 5 to 6, that would be the equivalent of a 1 pip movement. Now switching over into the commodities. If we take a look at something like gold, gold is a little bit different. If the price of gold was to trade from, let's just use the current price, from 1810, so it's roughly around the high of the day, down to 1800, so right there, this movement would be the equivalent of 100 pips. And so it's going to show up as 1000 if we're using the measurement tool. And so that's why I say it's a little bit different. Okay, most brokers are going to count a movement from 1800 to 1810 as 100 pips. And the reason why there's a little star, again, some brokers may do it differently, but the majority of them will count that movement from 1800 to 1810 as 100 pips. So if gold were to go from 1800 to 1801, most brokers are going to count that as 10 pips. And so the pip, when we're taking a look at something like gold, it's going to be the first number after the decimal. Make sense? And then on a more macro perspective, if we went from 1800 to 1900, most brokers are going to count that as 1,000 pips. So same math when you convert the pip movement into potential profit or loss. If you think back to micro lots representing 10 cents per pip, mini lots representing $1 per pip, standard lots representing $10 per pip, having an understanding of how something like gold would move gives you an advantage when you're planning out your positions, when you understand how to measure the pips based off of price movement. And it's pretty much the same thing if you're trading something like oil. Okay, now when I say it's pretty much the same thing, It's going to be a little bit different if we use the measurement tool and if we were to go from 40 up to 41. In this instance, when we are using the measurement tool, that movement right there would be the equivalent of 100 pips on most brokers. So from 40 to 41, or from 40 to 39, that would be the equivalent on most brokers of a 100 pip movement in price. When we switch into something like the indices, the S&P 500, the US 30, again, it's going to be very dependent on your broker for how they do the conversion of how many points this market moves to how many pips you gain or lose. But it's very simple to understand. If price goes, in the case of the S&P 500, from 3,200 to 3,225, that would be the equivalent of a 25-point move in price. Now, here's where things are going to be very dependent on where you choose to trade. 25 points on the S&P 500, some brokers will count that 25-point movement as 25 pips. And it's very few brokers that actually do that. Other brokers will count that 25-point movement as 250 pips. So the same movement from 3,200 to 3,225, some places that you can trade on will count that as 25 pips. Others, same price movement. The market only moved 25 points in this example, but they're going to count that as 250 pips. And then occasionally, what you'll see is a 25-point movement. In this instance, from 3,200 to 3,225, that's going to be considered as 2,500 pips. So if you're trading somewhere and you're unsure of how they actually convert the movement of price into a potential loss or profit, what I would encourage you to do first and foremost is use a demo account. Take a simple position, whether that be a micro lot, a mini lot, a standard lot, one that is very easy to understand the calculation, and then you'll be able to see. If you're taking a mini lot where the equivalent of a 1 pip movement is $1, you'll be able to tell if the market moves 1 point from 3,200 to 3,201, then you should see, are you trading on a broker that will count 1 point as 1 pip? Well, then that'll be $1. Are you trading on a broker that counts 1 point as 10 pips? Or are you trading on a broker that counts 1 point as 100 pips? That's something that you are going to have to explore because of how many different brokers are out there and how many different places you can trade. But these are really the only 3 ways that I've personally seen, where a single point will be the equivalent of 1 pip. And we'll just quickly update this. All right, some brokers are going to count a 1 point movement as 1 pip. Some brokers are going to count that 1 point movement as 10 pips. And other brokers, very rarely, but they are out there, will count a 1 point movement on the S&P 500 as 100 pips. And it's pretty much the same logic for the Dow Jones or the NASDAQ. When we're reading the price of the Dow Jones, if we were to take a look at a more macro idea, if price goes from 26,000 to 27,000, sure, you could use the measurement, but that is the equivalent of a 1,000 point movement. How does a 1,000 point movement translate into potential profits or losses? Again, some brokers will take a 1,000 point move on the Dow, which is pretty commonly referred to as US 30. And they're going to take that 1,000 point move and say 1,000 points equals 1,000 pips. A 1-to-1 ratio. Other platforms are going to say, well, 1,000 points is only equal to 100 pips. And then some are going to say that same 1,000 point movement is 10,000 pips. And again, you can take the same philosophy as what we were talking about on the S&P. If you're unsure of how your broker uses the contract sizing for your position and for the point calculation, please use a demo account. Educate yourself on how your broker specifically converts the potential price movement into your profits or losses. Because without having that understanding, it is impossible for you to use proper risk management. If you go into the markets thinking 1 point movement is only 1 pip, I can use a specific stop loss size and it's going to allow me to experience a 1% risk. If you think that you take the trade and you didn't know that a 1 point movement is actually the equivalent of 10 pips, well, now you're risking 10 times more than you originally intended. So leverage the measurement tool, leverage a calculator, leverage simple mathematics in your head to be able to understand how to actually measure the price movement, and then take it one step further and do some due diligence within your broker, regardless of if you're trading Forex, commodities, cryptos, the indices, doesn't matter. Take the steps to educate yourself on how does your broker that you decided to trade with convert price movement into your potential profits or losses.